that
The
you can.
names come up. That's why I had to have everybody register so that I can have their names and emails. So don't worry about recording attendance like
Okay, but
that.
just in case. Don't worry.
Um, I am Dr. D. I'm gonna make you a co-host though, so that if something happens where you need to like mute all or something, then you can help with that type of coordination. Representative Shawn Forrest coming from Springfield. How appropriate. It's hilarious.
It's psychological.
Jaco, where my baby at? Let me see his face. You on mute, what?
He's getting ready to get his hair cut, so he's downstairs getting ready to walk out.
Let me see him before he leaves.
How you doing, Representative Ford?
Good morning. Who said that? Tamar?
This is Ayesha Jaco from Westside United.
How are you?
All right, how are you?
Good. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone.
Happy Thanksgiving.
If I look down, Obari, I'm not being rude. I'm actually going to be talking to people on Facebook while we're doing this, who are watching.
Should I try to do this Facebook Zoom live too at the same time?
I think you probably should. I think it would be a good idea to do that.
Mm-hmm. So when you're saying you're talking to people Facebook Live, how are you doing that? What's your...
Everybody, I put it on my page and people are going to be watching and commenting on, having a conversation basically on my page.
If you share it, Dr. Cardin, I could share it on my page also. And I could go to your page, wherever you share it from, share it to, and then I could share that. Everybody could do it in there. All of their friends could watch it. We have a greater reach.
I would like to do that. I just need to, if somebody could share it, I will just share from your page. I don't know how to share from the actual Zoom.
Yeah, what's your Facebook, Dr. Cardinal, so I could go there and be ready to share your feed.
I think I'm gonna do it from my doctor page, Dr. Obari Cartman. I'm doing it now. It's looking like it's preparing live stream preview.
Okay, we're streaming. It's streaming now.
It's doing it?
Mm-hmm. Streaming now.
Man, that's so fancy. Y'all too cool for me. It is streaming now. I see myself all over the place. Okay. So yeah, y'all can go to my Dr. Obari Cartman page and share it if y'all want to do it from there. So Dr. D, can you also monitor that chat if people are talking on there? Because I won't be able to do that at the same time. All right, people are still logging in. Did I make you the host yet? I'm going to make you the host, Dr. D, so that you can let people into the waiting room also. I'm going to get started.
Is anybody else on Dr. Cartman's page yet? I'm trying to share it, but it hasn't popped up on my own yet. Anyone else?
No, I have it.
I just shared it.
You did? Well, who said that? Tamar?
I just shared it.
All right.
I did too.
All of our special guests here, Rep Ford, Jaco, Tamar, Cam Howard here yet? I don't see him. All these beautiful black faces I'm scrolling past. Look at all this VIP Black American list. Yeah, we finna fix all of our problems before 1 o'clock.
Today, right now, is about to get handled.
Whatever you bumped your head in against, somebody got here has the answer to that question. Right here, right now. I'm confident. Who am I missing? Cam Buckner and Cam Howard. I'm missing both of my Cams. I wonder if that's a thing. Can't never rely on no Cams.
Something about a Cam.
Something about that Cam. I don't even know what it is. Can't even put my finger on it. Something about that Cam. It should be streaming on Dr. Obari Cartman's Facebook page. Sounds so fancy when I say that.
You're fancy, doctor.
I am.
You make me want to become a doctor just so I can say that.
Can I tell you that's the only reason I did it? I could care less about none of the information that I learned. It's been useful to me in my life. I just want to be able to go into a room with white people and be like, that's Dr. Cartman, sir. Only reason I did this.
I would make my mama call me that. I would make my mama call me doctor. I would make my mother do it. That's who I hated the most. That's who I hated the most. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Can you pass the cornbread, doctor?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Dr. D, are you able to let people into the waiting room so I can stop looking for that? So yeah, I'm recording this. It's recording now. I can post this on the Facebook page. I can share it in the email. I'll make sure everybody has this recording. I think there's gonna be some good notes that comes from this. While we are letting folks in, can we start using this chat? We got a VIP list of folk in the room. So can we check in, let people know who you are, where you're coming from, what organization you might represent, links to websites, Instagram pages. We can just start doing some of the networking in the chat right now. That's one of the most useful things of a gathering like this, is that people can introduce themselves to each other. What I know about folks that decide to spend their Saturday morning at 11 o'clock on Zoom is that y'all people that care deeply about Black folks. And so if y'all can just meet each other, we have begun to do some work. So we can get some chat introductions going, just checking in, who you are, where you're from, what kind of work you do, any links to organizations, or you got things you want to promote, flyers or activities or surveys you're trying to get filled out, whatever it is. I feel like this chat could be really a resource all by itself if we're using it while we're talking. Dr. D, that is you letting people in the waiting room? Okay, good. Jaco, did you find my baby yet? Where'd he go? Did I miss it? I did miss it. Fantastic.
He waved at you though.
Did he? I'm gonna have to go back to the recording to wave back. All right, it's 11:11. I'm gonna start at 11:11. Who into numerology in here? Synchronicity. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this fantastic gathering. I'm super excited about this conversation. I'm just thrilled to be in the room, if you will, with so many brilliant folks that are doing such brilliant work. As much as we all are aware of the challenges of this year, I'm always just so much more invigorated about the possibilities that it means for us with the transitions. I haven't been calling it a tough year. I've been calling it a year full of transitions. And so I think this is going to be a very, very special conversation to help anchor us, to position us to begin 2021 with a lot more insight, clarity, good relationships, some plans. And so, though, again, like I said, those of y'all that decided to come spend your Saturday morning on this are the folks that give me hope, give me inspiration. So I'm thrilled to be in this space with you all. I'm also grateful to the Association of Black Psychologists for trusting me yet again to be in the president's seat. I've been for a couple of weeks, and this is my first official community forum as the newly elected president of the Chicago chapter. I'm assuming that because we all muted, that there's not a round of applause. I'm gonna hear it in my own imagination that everyone's standing to their feet and applauding this accomplishment. But no, it's really not even an accomplishment. It's really just, it's an opportunity to do work. And again, the reason I appreciate, the organization trusting me is because, I do things a little bit different. And we usually start our year with what we call a harambe, where we gather and eat crackers and cheese and hang out and meet each other and just regroup for the year. But I felt like we didn't have time for that, that we had work to do, that we wanted to get right to that work. And we wanted that work to be led by the people. We didn't want to have us and our brilliant minds and our sort of unique perspectives sitting around trying to plan what we wanted to do as an organization. We wanted our plans for this organization to be based on what the community needs from us. And so this is the first conversation that we're having for the year. We've been doing some behind the scenes planning just around policies and procedures and getting our stuff together. But when we do work, we want that work to be informed by this conversation. We don't have an agenda for the year yet. We're going to continue to do conversations and host forums. And I personally believe that we are beyond, like, we've done a lot of work in the mental health field to, ease some of the stigma, to remove some of the barriers. And I think that we're beyond that conversation. And I think people will still do that. Just how do you remove the stigma of mental health in the Black community? We still do that. But I think that we are trying to think about what is the next level of the conversation. Now, the stigma's been some ease in some ways. What are the topics? What are the areas of understanding that we need to provide? What are the conversations that we need to coordinate for our community? And what are the services? What are the programs? What are the actual real life? And we wanted to have this conversation in real life too. We got access to space. We got access to people. But what we do with that is something that I firmly believe needs to be guided by the folks in the community that are doing the work, boots on the ground, hands and hearts connected to the most vulnerable amongst us, to give us some insight into the direction that we need to go in for this year and beyond. And people are doing really good work. Another organization I'm part of, Real Charities, we have a food drive coming up on Friday. The sad part about what I'm seeing in terms of response to COVID and the other pandemics that are happening is that there's a lot of work being done just around basic survival for us. And so I'm seeing food pantries pop up. I'm seeing lots of food drives, particularly around Thanksgiving, lots of PPE giveaways, the masks, but like all of that for this year has been just keeping Black people alive, like just barely staying above water. And I believe that there needs to be a committee that's thinking about what's the next step beyond survival. What does it mean to not just have food in the pantry, but like to have peace of mind, to have joy, to have purpose, to have, the things that life is about, and that, we deserve more than survival. And so this is that committee, right? This is that team that is trying to think about what next beyond food, what can we provide to the community besides, deodorant, right? And it's sad that we need to do those things. And at the same time, we need to be preparing ourselves to think about what is the next level of functioning and well-being for our community. So that is the frame for this conversation. It's a big task. And unfortunately, as many doctors and degrees and organizations we have represented, we're in such an unprecedented time that we don't have easy answers for these questions. That there's no book to go through. I mean, there's no place, there's nobody to call to be like, okay, how do you figure this thing out? Because there's so many dynamics that are unique. So I firmly believe, though, that the collective wisdom of Black folks can figure this stuff out, which is why we're here. Before I say anything else, I would like to do this in proper protocol. I would like to, you know, we in Zoom, but we still got rituals, and we still got procedures. I'm still a youth in relative terms to the folks in the organization. So before I would like to say another word, I want to ask the permission of my elders to begin this conversation. So anyone older than me, anyone represents my elders to allow us to begin, please.
You have my permission to proceed.
Thanks, Dr. Scott. And also, you know, it's a strange way to do it, but I think we should also pause to do some form of a libation. We can just call it a moment of silence for just to, wherever you are, wherever you're situated, to find a way to acknowledge the multiple entities that are also engaging in this conversation. We've lost a lot of people this year, so I want to recognize them, but also just to invite those ancestors, those spirit beings, those guides that motivate all of us in the day-to-days of our work, that we're asking to be a part of this conversation, to tap into a wisdom beyond the present moment, because we connected to folks that are the first folks. And so we've been through pandemics, and we've been through, you know what I'm saying, traumas and trials and tribulations, and we've worked it out. And so I want to lean on those spirits, those ancestors that have guided us through, to continue to be with us as we talk today. So we have a moment of silence to acknowledge our ancestors, those beings that we lost, and to ask them to invite them into this space. Okay. All right, let's get to work. Are all of my guest speakers here? Cam, any of the Cam show up yet? Cam Buckner, Cam Howard. Okay. Well, let me start this way. All of you may not be familiar with the Association of Black Psychologists. So I would like to begin with some introductions of some of the folks in Chicago. I want people to know who is in the room. I meet people all the time that say, I've never met a Black psychologist. I don't even know where to find them. And we got like organizations full of them. We have on the call representatives of, I think the president of the Black Social Workers is also here. We have the national president of the Black Psychologists Association is on here. So we have representatives of collectives of thinkers and healers that have been putting in decades of work into this question of what does it mean for Black people to be whole, to be healed, to define success and humanity for ourselves, and to tap into our ancient understandings of that to move forward to the best of our abilities. And we got a lot of new folks in this conversation of mental health, and it's trending, and it's cool, and it's hip, and I love that. And it's also important to recognize that this organization, ABSI, is a 50-year-old organization. And we still got elders in place that have been here for 50 years that have been putting in this work. I'm not 50 years old yet. I'm not even, before I was born, we have folks that are doing this work, right? And so some of them are still here doing this work. I meet elders that have been doing this. So when I think about what does it mean for me to still have 40 more years left of doing this work, it's really inspiring to me. So I want to acknowledge their presence and invite some of them. If there's some old heads in ABSI that want to help introduce this organization, to talk about what we do, why we do it, I think Sharon Bethia was on, maybe Dr. Barnett, but I want to introduce the organization. I wanted to share who here are on the board. I know Dr. D's here. I see Dr. Belvin Miles. I see Dr. Karen Witherspoon. These are folks from the Chicago chapter on our board. Dr. Hanifa Mateen, Dr. Nyala Joan Cooper, who's an elder. So I'm saying like there's a bunch of PhDs in the room, right? When I say we can figure this out, we can figure this out. Dr. Marilyn Scott, we got folks that have been doing this. Dr. Matara Wright. I'm just in the screen that I see. So I'm not even sure who else is here, but I want to introduce our organization to you. I'm going to actually defer to an elder that can probably speak to some of the history a little bit better, so that when we get into this conversation with the community invited guests, I want to say this, when I'm asking them, what do we need from you? I want them to have some confidence that this is what we have to offer, that this is who we are, that we got bodies of journals, of theories and research, that we got hundreds of years represented on this call of therapy, of community work, of interventions, of curriculum development, that we have a bunch of stuff. We got resources here. And, you know, we don't have to look to no one else to figure out some of this stuff. So does anyone want to do that, to speak on some of the history of ABSI, some of the current president? I'm gonna actually call on Dr. Barnett for that, because you are our national leader, to speak to introduce ABSI. Tell our guests who we are, what we do, what we've been doing. And if any other elders want to speak to that. I want to introduce ourselves first before we have our guests introduce themselves and their work.
I'm sorry, did you call on me?
That's you. You're up. This is,
All right.
I also should have prepared you for that, but you're good at this.
No, fine. Thank you. I am so excited to see all these beautiful faces on here. I'm Donnell Barnett. I serve as the president-elect of the National Association of Black Psychologists, and I'm based in Chicago. We, as Obari mentioned, we are 52 years strong of doing work in mental health, in prevention and advocacy and civil rights. We are a collection of folks who are sort of classic psychology, as well as a lot of folks who have brought in traditional African thought and thinking of how we bring healing to our people, and really trying to inspire sort of this movement of bringing liberation and healing for our folks. I see Dr. Young, I see Dr. Cooper, I see Dr. Mateen, you know, some of our elders who have guided us, sort of this younger generation that have guided us to this point. And so I just want to acknowledge all the folks in Chicago and all of you all that have joined today for partnering and engaging with us as we stop, pause, and think about where we are in this moment of time and position ourselves in all of history. What we do in this moment and moving forward begins a shift. And so we really truly believe that, and thank you for partnering with us in this way. We have chapters all across the world, primarily in all of your major cities here in the United States. And so we draw from a vast network of folks to engage this work. And so that's a little bit about our organization and what we do. I just want to acknowledge all the folks and thank Dr. Cardman for putting this together and allowing us to be a part of this fantastic work.
Wonderful. Also, we'll put Dr. Tiffany Jones on the spot. So we have also the president of the Black Social Workers in Chicago, and maybe some representatives of the National Black Social Workers. So we're asking you to speak to the Black Mental Health Workers, ABSI, but also ABSW, which is another collective, another 50-year-old organization of Black social workers who've been putting in the same work from a different vantage point. But if Dr. Tiffany Jones wants to introduce herself and represent the Black social workers, or we got another past president, Jaton Rollins from Black social workers, you might do that if Tiffany Jones is not available. I see her name, but I don't know. Or Randy Sadler want to introduce the Black social workers. Any of the three of y'all are welcome to just chime in for a moment to talk about who y'all are and what y'all represent as Black social workers. That's Dr. Tiffany. Okay.
Hi, good morning. Good morning. We are so excited to be a part of this. I am the past president of Chicago ABSW. Randy Sattler is also on the call, and our current president, Dr. Tiffany Johnson. And we are actually working and looking at the impact of COVID right now and what our community response needs to be in the midst of the community violence against ourselves and others against us, as well as addressing some of the mental health needs of the people in the community. And so we will be looking at that on December 9th, and it's in the chat. But we've been around for 52 years, aggressively addressing things in the community like transracial adoption, the adversities of community violence, as it relates to terrorism by police and what that does to our community and the trauma that's impacted upon our families, as well as things around educational issues and how our children are labeled and edified. And even in the midst of COVID, how our children are being impacted by working remotely and not connected to the resources that they were usually attached to. So we are very much open to doing partnerships, and you can reach out to any one of us as you see our names here in the chat, because we're looking to do more partnerships this upcoming year with more meaningful work around addressing some of the fundamental needs of our communities in partnership with other people. So we are so thankful for this opportunity to be on this discussion today. Thank you, Dr. Obari.
Absolutely. Okay.
Dr. Obari, can I say hello? Dr. Obari, my name is Kathy Gilliam. I'm the treasurer with the Chicago Association of Black Social Workers. My voice is a little muffled because I have a little cold. But when God answered my prayer today by beginning on this call, because the first thing I heard you say, and it's a pleasure meeting you too, Doctor, was what the community needs from us. And one of the things our professional development committee is doing is providing trainings, and so to the community. So we want to provide trainings not only to the professionals but also to the community in order for us to connect with the community. And so we wanted to partner with the Black psychologists in order to do this. Now, our trainings this year are going to focus on advocating, teaching our community how to advocate for themselves. And so we have two ways we want to do this. One way is through civic engagement. We want to teach our community what political offices mean and what they do, so that when it comes time to vote, they understand what they're voting for and voting for their interests. And then the other thing we want to address this year, in light of Breonna Taylor and all the other trauma our folks have been under this year, is looking at racism and emotional injury, because we feel that it's a big area that needs further research and addressing, and also to teach people how to put language to what we've been experiencing. And when we look at the television and see another Black person's been killed. So that's our focus this year. So I'm hoping to get contact information from the folks that are here on the phone. I was saying, Lord, it's a lot of organizations out here. How do you know who to target? But like you said, those who are on the call this morning are interested and have a mission to help our people. So that's what we're trying to do. And I hope that we can partner together with you in order to support one another as we move through 2021. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. In terms of contact information, everyone is putting their contact in the chat. So if you're just on the phone and you can't see, we're going to save all these and make sure everybody has access to all the recordings and the information and put it into the chat. So everyone will be connected from here on out. And I want to just emphasize real quick the fact that we both lead our organizations by saying Black psychologists and Black social workers. There's a lot of conversation about sort of the generic push for mental health and therapy, but there's something very particular about our experience and our healing and the things that we need, the particulars of our culture and our systemic intergenerational trauma, So we are positioned uniquely to deal with those issues. So when I asked the guests to come speak to us around what we need, and everyone is invited to speak to us with what we need, keep that in mind, that we have a unique position in this. And that there's other organizations that talk about mental health that do good work, but there's a limit to how American and Western systems of healing can deal with intergenerational trauma, because part of the trauma included culture. Part of the continued trauma includes identity, and that is our specialty. And so I wanted to emphasize the Black and make sure that we're anchored in that. I think we're just talking about Black folk in the room today that I can see, at least those that are on video. There might be some agents in the room. There's always agents in the room, but it's also on Facebook Live. So we invited them. Y'all welcome to join. We're going to do the work anyway. So let's get to our guests. I would like to introduce our guest speakers for today. We got 5 super dynamic folk that do not flinch when I say we talking about Black folk, which is so important to me, because in a lot of rooms, you got to whisper like Black people, right? Because we will be afraid of it. Everybody I ask very intentionally, because the work they're doing is for us, is about us. It's unapologetically Black. They work with other folk, but they do it and coordinate resources so that Black people benefit from it, which is something that is dear to my heart. Even the political folks, you know what I mean? I'd be nervous about political folks. I know we all be a little nervous about. I first met Rep. Shawn Ford at a reparations demonstration. He probably don't even remember that, right? And so we got even before I met Cam Buckner. I think he was on a panel together, but I saw him, Rep. Cam Buckner. I saw him a couple of weeks ago at the Will Calloway demonstration, pushing against the Fraternal Order of Police. So even our politicians on the call, these are the ones that are for us. I'm gonna let them introduce themselves, but I'm gonna tell them why I asked them to be here. Ayesha, Jaco, and Tamar are both brilliant sort of educators and activists and organizers that are quietly on the South and West Side building empires that are coordinating resources to serve our people at the basic need, but also just the elevated needs, the peace of mind, the education, the rites of passage, the things that we need beyond survival. And Cam Howard is, the stalwart of the reparations movement, national co-chair of National Coalition for Reparations for Blacks in America, and a personal elder of mine. So all these folk are people that I've done work with, that I've inspired by their work, that I'm thrilled to hear their insights about what part of their work helps us see more clearly the emotional, mental, spiritual well-being of our people. I know that a lot of psychologists, we work in, offices, and we in the universities, and we can be a little bit comfortable sometimes, but like the work that y'all are doing is in the street with the people, shaking hands, door to door, and that gives a different perspective on how we're doing. We have diagnostic tools, and we have surveys and scales and that kind of stuff. A lot of it comes from a Western perspective. A DSM comes from the University Academy that trains us to think about how to see people. But y'all have a different, more intimate understanding of our people in ways that I think we need to hear from. And so that's why I invited you. You're welcome to share as much of your work as you can. I want y'all to know each other, right, to the same extent, but I want the healers, the workers, the thinkers, the writers to know from the community what y'all are doing and what part of that connects to what we are interested in. Because you can't escape mental health. You're talking violence, you're talking housing, you're talking whatever you're talking about. Mental health is essentially, fundamentally located in the need and the intervention. And so we connected in ways. I see y'all doing therapy in ways that you wouldn't call it that, right? I see y'all doing community interventions that have mental, social, emotional health focuses without the training. And so I see y'all as having expertise that can connect with us and our theories and our work and our bodies of resources that can really do some brilliant, amazing things. So that is why we're here. I would like y'all to go. The first 2 questions I have, and y'all can choose your order, is just share about your work, introduce yourselves and what you're doing, what some initiatives you're working on, but also just speak to that question. From your vantage point, how do you see the well-being of our people? How are we doing out here? How are we doing through COVID, before COVID? What do you see as the the mental, emotional, spiritual well-being, the state of the mental health of our people from your vantage point, from, again, being on the ground, connecting across constituents. How are we doing from your view? So I want y'all to speak to those first two questions. And then the third question, I'm gonna come back around. We're gonna do one round of that. Introduce yourselves, talk about your work, share your perspective about how we're doing from your vantage point. And then for the third question, we're gonna come back around, loop again, and I want you to share with us what you want from, if you had to imagine, like hypothetically, you had an army of Black therapists and social workers at your disposal, how would you deploy us? Right? No, and I want this to be an imagination exercise. Don't think about the limitations of time or money, but like if we were at your beck and call from your organization's vantage point, what would you do with us? Where would you put us? How would you use us? How could we serve you in the most sort of fantastical ways possible? And then we're going to open the floor to have, to get some clarity points, talk about those questions from different community stakeholders. But I want this to begin with the five of you. So again, this first round, share your work and tell us how we're doing from your view. Then we'll come back around and talk about that question about what specifically we can do to serve you and your work much more better. Who wants to start? I see Cam Howard has joined us. Cam Buckner here. I can also pick if y'all want me to do that. I see Tamar first. Tamar, get us going. Unmute yourself.
I should have turned my camera off. I knew you was gonna pick me first. My name is Tamar Manasseh. I am the founder and the executive director of MASK, Mothers and Men Against Senseless Killings. And when I started the organization 7 years ago, it was an anti-violence organization. But 7 years ago, that's what it was. Today, it's actually a school. We just built our own school on a corner of 75th and Stewart out of shipping containers. And we retrofit these shipping containers as classrooms. And during the pandemic, we've had a classroom. Our classrooms have been full of kids, CPS students, because 75th and Stewart is in a really poor area. And the thing is, there are a lot of very poorly paid essential workers that work there, that live there. And so these people were faced with the choice of losing their jobs or leaving their children at home alone. Which one were they going to do? So what we did, so those parents could keep their jobs, these are the Uber drivers, these are the Instacart shoppers, these are the people who keep the stores stocked, who stock the shelves of the supermarkets and the drugstores that we go to. We had to find something to do with their kids. We couldn't let them leave their kids at home alone. So this is when the community steps up and says, okay, how can we help? So we've had those kids in our classrooms since March. And so with the pandemic and with the school year happening, with the new school year starting, every day we have at least 20 kids in our classrooms. They get lunch, they get breakfast, and they get one-on-one attention from teachers every single day. So not only do we assist the teachers in CPS classrooms who these children are doing e-learning with, we also add to that by actually supplementing what they're getting and adding more. We have a kindergartner who's doing division now. And the thing is, what's so scary is maybe the silver lining in this pandemic was that we got to stop time for a minute and really do an assessment of where our kids really actually are. And academically. And the thing is, our kids are failing. They're drowning. Yeah. They are drowning. And I see how the education that kids can sometimes receive in certain schools and in certain poorer neighborhoods, I see how it creates the culture of violence that we see in the community. Because there is a correlation between my answer to stopping violence is building a school. That's what it was. Yeah. It used to be feeding people. That worked. All of these things have to be addressed individually. But now it's making sure these kids get what they need academically. That when this pandemic passes and has been managed and kids go back to school, that our kids aren't 2 years behind everybody else. It's making sure that they get to stay competitive. And I mean, just being in a room with a bunch of Black psychologists, I sit in a room in rooms with kids all week. And I'm not a psychologist, I'm just a mother. And we could really use that. There are a lot of things these kids see. There's a lot of untreated trauma. There are things that kids do and parents just call it, oh, he's being lazy, or, you know, he's just bad, or all of these things are reactions to trauma, but parents don't know. They don't know that. These parents don't know that, and kids can't vocalize it. And so we do need people to work with us on that level who can come into a classroom, because Black people sometimes don't get therapy because they have to go to the therapist. The therapist doesn't come to them. So the thing is, sometimes you might have to do a little street corner therapy. You might have to come and sit on a block and actually just be there. Come and sit down a day after somebody's been murdered, or 2 days after somebody's been murdered, when these teenagers have lost another teenager, another friend, another kid that they started out in kindergarten with, and they're 15 and this one is gone, but they're still left. And you have to explain to them and help them understand and not be angry with themselves because they survived. So sometimes, I mean, we could really, really use that. I'm not going to even say sometimes. We can always use that, because trauma is an ongoing thing in the Black community every single day. We're seeing it on television. We're seeing it around us. We're looking out our front windows and we're seeing it. We're in our cars and we're everywhere we go. Everything we look at, Black people are being traumatized all the way around everywhere. So psychologists, the Black psychologists in the Black community is probably one of the most important people. And if we could just get psychologists into places where they can do the most good, into these places where people are going to go, but they might not come to you. If we can get mobile psychologists, that would be amazing. So I don't know if you asked me all that, but that's what I thought I'd share right now. So yes, but basically that's what I do.
So can you speak a little bit more to, you talk about the academic well-being, from your view of not even just the kids in the class, what about the parents, the young people, the shooters? How would you describe the social emotional well-being from your intimate conversations with them? Like the impact of the trauma. You say this constant trauma. What is that doing to them from what you see?
They're drowning. They are drowning. They're drowning. And if this is not something, if we don't address this literally every day, if we don't set aside as much time for taking care of these kids' mental health as we do for teaching them classical music or teaching them the King's English, we're going to be in trouble. We're going to be in trouble, because the jails are full of people, full of young people who can write letters and who can read, full of them, but they didn't get the help that they needed to keep them out of there. They didn't get the help that they needed to go in a different direction. And so what we really need, while we still have the chance, while we have these kids in our classrooms, and we're building more of these schools, we're building, as soon as we can get the aldermen to go ahead and green light the other vacant lots, we have 7 more shipping containers that we're built. So we have a waiting list where we can actually put up more classrooms on more blocks and on more vacant lots to give more people access to what we offer. Access to education, access to a hot meal, even now access to counseling. So the thing is, it's a matter of making sure we can create places for kids to come to, that they can just, and it's at the corner. They don't have to cross gang boundaries. They don't have to get on the bus because they don't have bus fare. Just make it as accessible as we can. These kids are struggling. Kids that don't go to school, those are the kids that turn into the shooters. We are in a prime right now. It's not about stopping the shooters. It's about creating less shooters. So right now, that is my job. It is, how do I make sure these kids don't become the very thing that we're trying to protect them from?
Okay.
So it does. It literally is going to take an army, the army of psychologists that are all on this call right now, is going to take all of us getting together and putting our heads together. I'm in a classroom, so I can say, hey, this is what these kids need. And I don't think CPS has the resources to address that. This is something that we need to do for us, because they are not going to do it. They haven't done it, and they aren't going to do it. That's why you have so many kids who, when the pandemic started, we saw this enormous adult literacy issue in the Black community. People can't help their kids with their work if they can't read themselves.
Right.
So it's just a layer of issues that we have to deal with. And I think forums like this is the perfect starting point for that.
Thank you so very much for your work. And again, for doing it without waiting for the grant to show up and for the CPS to approve it.
You can't wait on them.
You have some empty box cards and you set them up and you made a school from scratch. You didn't wait for the charter, you just did it. So.
That's what Black folks did in the South. If that's how we started out, if HBCUs were born out of one-room schoolhouses, imagine what we can give birth to now.
Yeah, I love it. Let me go over, I see Rep. Shawn Ford next. I know you've been working on a couple of mental health initiatives. Can you share about the current progress of those and just from the different, that last time I saw you was at the Black Mall event talking about business development. So I know you got your hands at a couple of different pots, the reparations I know of, the business, Black businesses, and also the mental health. Can you speak to how those things are connected and other things that you're working on as a state rep?
Certainly, Dr. Cartman, and good morning to everyone. And once again, we all should be grateful for being able to be on this live today with you, Dr. Cartman. And we know it's a pandemic, but we're able to be healthy right here. So thank you so much for convening.
Sure.
I would say that one, I should start out by saying that this is an amazing conversation because Black people talking about mental health is something that we should be doing all the time because I do agree with you, Dr. Cartman, that we are moving away from the stigma as much as it used to be a stigma that we should not seek mental health. So this conversation helps eliminate that stigma even more. We are working together on the West Side with the city, the state, and the county with a behavioral health task force led by Bobby Wright, Dr. Safir over here, and we are convening all of the providers on the West Side to deal with mental and behavioral health. One thing's for sure, we have to all come to the understanding, and I know everyone on this call understands that it's one thing to have strong physical health. It's just as important to have strong mental health. And we don't have that, then it's going to be very difficult to survive and be very productive. As a Black person in America, it is trauma all the time. And what you all do, I'm very happy that you guys help people with the ability to cope with trauma, because it's not debilitating if you have the coping skills, and if you have someone that can help you with coping skills. You don't always have to take medicine, but you can always have ways to deal with your challenges. I would say that one of the most important things that we would need to do to deal with this, if we had funding, that would be to get more Black psychologists, social workers, and psychiatrists to be available throughout our community. Because what we have now, we have a lot of people that really doesn't understand the challenges of Black people, of people with the trauma that we are experiencing. And every day if you go into their office, they're actually experimenting with you. Whereas if you go into Dr. Cartman's office, he understands exactly where you are, because he understands where you come from and what you're dealing with. And so I would hope that the state, the city, and the county, and the federal government realize just how important it is to make sure that we promote the need for mental and behavioral health. And the only recommendation that I would have with the group here is that we do everything that we can to get as many people enrolled in the Obamacare. That's the Affordable Care Act. And if we do that, then we could drive people into care, because all Black people, pretty much, that's illegal citizens, have a right to health care and to health insurance in Illinois. It's a matter of whether or not they could get that the services. But we do need to make sure that our people that's experiencing, everyone, regardless to whether or not you're experiencing difficulties, but everyone, we should have a goal to get everyone covered. And if you're unemployed and you don't have a job, it's cheaper for you, and you don't have to worry about co-payments. You don't have to worry about co-payments for medication. You just need to get enrolled in the Affordable Care Act. And if you're a small business, then it becomes a little more difficult for you because now you need to pay the premiums, and you have to pay the premiums for medicine. And so in our communities, with all the violence and the substance use disorder going on, we need to make sure that we support organizations like you, Dr. Cartman. So whatever I could do to support this organization and this movement, please count on me so that we can get funding so that your message could get out and people understand our community could service them.
Mm-hmm. Give us a little more insight into some of the policy part of this. This isn't my area, right? I don't even, I don't know this part that well. Are there bills? So, yeah. Are there like?
Yeah. So it sort of makes me nervous to be in a room with all you smart people, because I don't want to say the wrong thing as it relates to behavior and mental health, because it's very serious. So to the policy, one of the most strongest policy things that we could do is increase the reimbursement for Medicaid recipients so that they can have access to strong counseling. Because if you are a counselor, if you're a psychiatrist or psychologist, you can't keep your doors open if you don't have reimbursement rates that support your business. So we need to make sure that we do everything that we can to increase the reimbursement rates for Medicaid patients in Illinois. That's huge. We need to collaborate more and make the hospitals that service our neighborhoods collaborate with individuals that look like the community to service them, like Dr. Cartman, that understand. So we have all these FQACs, and we have the safety net hospitals that can partner with all of the psychiatrists and psychologists in the neighborhood and support them in their efforts. And so we probably need to make sure in Springfield and the city and the county that we help with some collaborations with the independent psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers. I think I heard Tamar say that it's just as important that people have their behavioral health as they do learning how to read and write the keen language. It's true. I mean, there's nothing you have if you don't have your health. But as it relates to public policy, reimbursement rates, the ability for the psychiatrists, psychologists, and social workers to have the funding to do the work in the neighborhoods and the support of their organizations and their practices is critical. And it's no different than Black contractors that want to do road construction projects and things like that. I think that the psychiatrists and psychologists struggle with the same thing, getting contracts to do their work. And so make sure that we use your collaboration to talk about how Catholic charities receive tons of money to do work, but they really don't understand the neighborhoods that they serve. In fact, I'm Catholic, but Catholic churches have left the neighborhoods. We have NAMI. NAMI is another fantastic organization, but you know what? They receive the block of the money, while organizations like yours, you guys struggle to get those big grants. And then you have to worry about getting subcontracts from NAMI in order to do the work. The city of Chicago just did the same thing. They just gave a big grant to one of the white organizations, maybe NAMI, and now you all would have to go and try to contract with them. They need you, but once again, they need you to get the grants because you're going to make them look powerful. And if you walk away from the table, now they can't deliver services because you are not going to be there to help them be successful. So I want to see how we could make sure that we call on the governor as of now, there's $3.2 billion that the governor is spending from the Federal CARES Act money. We as Black people should make sure that we send a letter to the governor and demand that we have money in our communities for the impact that the COVID-19 is having on our community. So mental health is definitely a major factor in how our community is being impacted by COVID-19, because you see it in the people that's dying, you see it in the violence, and you see it in the struggles of people. So if you have a family member that is struggling from COVID-19 or that have died, they need support, mental health support. If you have someone that's been killed in your neighborhood or your family, that's trauma. You need support. So there is a lot of money out here right now that the governor has that he can write a grant and make sure that the Black psychiatrists, Black psychologists, and social workers have the ability to do the work in our neighborhood. And finally, I'll say, we see what happened to the 5-year-old baby that was shot on the couch. Last night, we saw 9 people shot on the South Side. In the paper on Friday, it says 700 homicides. Where is the immediate triage to our neighborhood? You guys have the ability to do that, but there's no funding for you to do it. So I will help you if you all are ready to write the governor. I'll get it to the governor saying this is what we need so that we could be on site and we can provide support for these families. And the lady that lost her, that son got shot, no one that I know of as of yesterday came to provide them with the support that they need for to support them with their mental health. The 9 people shot, nobody's going over there to that neighborhood to provide them with the mental health support. They send the police and they send all that, but people need to be treated for the trauma.
Yeah, that's good. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
We'll come back to this question. I'm going to open the floor soon. Just again, this is an imagination visioning exercise. But in both of y'all, which are talking about what you need, there's this sense of needing counseling and therapy. And when I hear you talk about it, I imagine a one-to-one relationship, a sit down in a, on the block or in the office or where in their house. But one of the things that I'm concerned about is I don't know that we have, you say an army, there's a bunch of us here, but I don't know if we have a big enough army of counselors and therapists to meet the need of the pain that the people are experiencing. One of the things I want to play around with is what other formats of healing, of therapeutic services, or programming, cultural arts, whatever it is, what else can it look like beyond one at a time, 6 weeks, whatever else, the session, the traditional model of therapy that we all got trained in, and in some ways are stuck in because it's connected to how we get compensated from insurance and all these things. I'm wondering if this is a moment, this year has forced us to have to think bigger, more innovative, and what that could possibly look like. I want to spend some time on that too. But let me get my other guest speakers to introduce themselves and share some of their insights. I'm going to go right to Ayesha Jaco. I'm asking Ayesha to speak from 2 hats. So she is executive director of Westside United. So she's been in the funding in the organization world, but also she founded a youth dance center who's been doing some of the most amazing, artistic, creative productions with young people that you would not expect to be doing dance and art and poetry at that level, which gives her 2 different, points of view where she has intimate relationships with young people as an artist, but also work in the nonprofit and the foundation world, and now as an executive director. So we'll speak to both of those, maybe at the same time. Share your work there and some of the insights that you've gained around mental emotional health for our people. And you can speak to what you need from us too if you want to do all of it at once.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. It's such an honor to be here with you. I do wear a few hats in my space in the community. First, as executive director for Westside United, our big, hairy, audacious goal is rooted in decreasing the life expectancy gap. that lingers between the Loop and Tim Westside communities. There's a 14-year gap, and this is nothing new. For years as a Westside native, you could feel disparity in our city of 77 communities that's pretty segregated and has historically been segregated. But when you look at the region of Westside United, if you take the blue line, the green line, the pink line, you drive the Jackson bus, Madison bus, and you go from the Loop to as far west as Austin, you'll start to see the difference in disparity. And so my role is working with hospitals who have pretty much come to the carpet understanding their historical role in the disinvestment and disparity that lingers in these communities. And they've taken a pledge to work with their economic engines as an industry to provide restorative repair to these communities. So when we talk about these hospitals that I convene, Amita Health, UI Health, Lurie Children's, Sinai, Rush University Medical Center, if combined, they'd be the #1 employer in the state. So they began to ask the question, what if? What if we had a targeted number of our annual hires come from the West Side? What if out of our capabilities to invest that we gave a certain percentage to West Side vendors only to spur development in communities and corridors that never rebuilt after the riots in 1968? What if we looked at across the key drivers of life expectancy from a health condition standpoint, we doubled down on maternal child health disparities since Black women in East Garfield Park have the highest disparity on the West Side? What if we targeted hypertension management? What if, because we provide internships collectively, we gave a certain amount to West Side youth to build their career trajectory? What if we gave career pathways to our entry-level non-clinical positions that retire 30 years later in the same position and go back to their communities at the same economic level? So it was a reckoning, understanding their part in the historical racism and structural disinvestment that has destabilized the West Side over decades. And it's about repairing and restoring in that way. So most of my work is there. Recently, with the onset of COVID-19, this was not a surprise to our work, and it was not a surprise to Black people. We've been in the trenches and dealing with different sorts of pandemics. So COVID did nothing but exacerbate the causes that were there. When you look at the highest mortality and morbidity rate, they're in communities that have historically had the highest rate of diabetes, heart disease, cancer, homicide, opioid overdose. So what COVID did was just blow that out of the water. And so part of our work has been working with the mayor's racial equity rapid response team to make sure our communities on the front line in Austin, South Shore, Auburn, Gresham, who initially had the highest death rates, have what they need as the true first responders. So as it relates, as you mentioned, yes, there's been PPE distribution, there's been emergency food operations standing up. But when we think about mental health and we think about the implications of what this pandemic is going to leave behind, we do need those healers on deck, as Tamar mentioned, popping up, being on site. My role is also to be an honest broker. So at Westside United, we are that grant maker who would partner with an Oprah Winfrey Charitable Foundation with her $5 million gift to Chicago. That came to us, and we were tasked with talking and getting grants to those grassroots, grass tops organizations to build out their capabilities for COVID response and recovery efforts, because the answers are there. The people know what they need. They know what they need in their communities. And so part of my role too is to make sure that we're not prescripting, dictating from outsiders what our communities need. So part of my work has been in that space as an intermediary, as someone working to bring not only healthcare, but other anchor institutions that have historically disinvested in our communities, a form of reparations back to communities that deserve to be rebuilt and that deserve investment. When we talk about young people, we know that brilliance is in our DNA. And when we look at Chicago in particular, who became the second home to the blues and just all these great literary movements through Gwendolyn Brooks and others, et cetera, we have a great history here. And so part of the work in working with young people is employing Sankofa, taking them back to who we were and what we are, having them own that and claim that. And when we look at COVID-19, you know, just as what Tamar mentioned around what the solution to helping bridge the gap in what the education climate provided with COVID and people having to shelter in place, is the same with the arts. So how do we provide a virtual space where these young people are not able to leave the home of their abuser, or they're not able to get that meal that they were getting? What can this community of healers provide as an alternative? We know that they're on social media. We know that they need to move. They need to learn how to meditate. They need a strong set of coping skills that they can dig into and access at a moment's notice, that also becomes part of their movement and existence. It's scary that for almost the past 9 months, we've been in this virtual space trying to figure out how to navigate. So imagine what a young person is thinking about and how they have to adapt their social skills, etc. So I know we're got to hear from 2 more people, but just wanted to provide that as a quick overview of where I am in Westside United space around racial equity and health equity, and then how we're looking to empower young folks in this virtual space with them accessing the arts and modes of expression.
Okay, I love it. Very thorough. One quick follow-up question. In thinking about using the virtual space to give young people access to a different set of tools, meditation, breathing, yoga, have you been able to translate your programming? Are they, I mean, you say they own social media and they own YouTube. How do we get them to do the things that we as healers could bring to them? How do we make it accessible? How do we make it cool? How do we, like, we can provide it, but if they won't come, then we're still at the same place. What have you learned around your innovative ways to stay connected and engaged, to have them log in when it's time to log in and do things that they may not be comfortable with and try new stuff, the stuff that we think is good for them that they might think is boring or whatever? How have you mixed this medium of virtual space to turn into opportunities to give new skills, new ways of being to young people, despite not being able to do it in person?
Well, I think half the battle is the fact that we are virtual, and they already employ a lot of virtual platforms, as you mentioned, social media. So they're there. The other part of that is you have to be savvy with who the messenger is. It does have to be cool. It does have to be relatable. So one of our strategies is that we hire young people through our After School Matters program. Our instructors are young folks that used to be in the program that are from the West and South sides, that know how to speak their language, that are still close enough to make what should be digestible relatable to them. So it is that delicate balance of finding out who that key messenger is, what's the best way to employ that key messenger as an elder, and then to work to get that strategy to them. That's been part of our success, I would say. So if that's a celebrity, if that's a local celebrity, musician, poet, etc., someone that they look up to, that makes all the difference. Which is why we need them to be psychologists and social workers as well, to help with that.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. We got 2 more guests I wanted to introduce before we open the floor. It's time to get tight already. Who do I have next? I see Cam Howard. Can you please share with us some of your work and some of the ways that ABPSY can help articulate the injury that you have been fighting for through reparations to repair? What can we be of service? How can we be of service to you in the reparations movement?
Thank you, Dr. Obari, and thank everyone else who's attended and also who's presented. Greetings to everyone. Yes, I'm Cam Howard. I'm with the National Coalition of Blacks for Reparations in America, in COBRA. I've been with the coalition for 16 years. The last 3.5 years, I've been the national male co-chair. Our group has a male and female co-chair on a national level, as well as in our chapters. We were one of the first organizations to deal with the gender balance issue over 30-some years ago. In the 1990s, in COBRA came out with what we called our Legal Strategies Commission. came up with what we call the 5 injury areas in which any reparations package must address. And one of the injuries areas is peoplehood, our culture, our identity, that type of thing, our language, trust for sovereignty, economic development, education, criminal punishment. And health was the final of the 5 injury areas. It wasn't in that order, but we knew at that time how tremendously important the health issue was in our country, and how our physical and mental health that was directly attributed to some of the experiences we've had in this country of oppression, enslavement, Jim Crow, et cetera. On a national level, we're working with HR 40. As many people know, this is a bill that is designed and was revised to study and develop reparation proposals for African Americans. There's 100 and almost 70 co-sponsors. We're looking for a markup on this bill before the next congressional session, and hopefully an executive order in the first 100 days. We're working in that regards on a national level. Locally, I work with Evanston as they were the first city to create a governmental body to address reparations. We worked here in Chicago. Most people don't know that Chicago has a reparations subcommittee in the Health and Human Relations Committee that needs a lot of pushing. And so we'd definitely like to bring ABC Chicago in that arena to help us push that forward. And seeing what was going on locally, I wrote a pamphlet laying the foundation for local reparations, guidelines for providing national symmetry for local reparations efforts. It's a piece that we're disseminating across the country so that the 3 purposes of local reparations are in place in every one of these cities. And there are scores of cities now that are trying to reduce local reparations. And the 3 purposes, one is to propel HR 40. The second one is to, actually the first one is off of triage. I heard somebody, I think it was State Rep Shawn Ford, talk about triage. Most of our inner cities and across the country, they're like disaster areas. Not just the violence, but just the conditions in which does not lend itself toward development. And so in a disaster area, the first thing you do is bring in triage to apply the limited resources in the maximum way to produce survivability for the most people in that situation. And that's what we see ourselves in across this country. And so local reparations is a form of triage. The second thing is to propel HR 40. And the third thing that we need to understand when we're engaging in local reparations is that we have to put in community structures that will receive the national resources. Someone talked about how resources are going to these white organizations. If there was a reparations victory in Washington tomorrow, then these white and Jewish organizations will be distributing reparations in our community. We have to put together community structures, and we put together the Conrad World Chicago Community Reparations Commission, which would be a stakeholder commission to actually receive and distribute the repair to our people. And these things must take place. And again, we need a wide representation of our community on these commissions. And they would also actually be the distributors of federal funds and state funds as they come down. Where are we at right now with the health of our people? We are, as a longtime reparationist, one who looks at the relationship between our people and this government and the systems of this government that have historically been managed and directed and governed by whites. What we understand is the Americanism is inherently, there's a disregard for Black health in Americanism and a simultaneous attack on the bodies and minds of Black people. Well, we were brought here, health-wise, we were only given enough food to work, to produce. And it had no regard for our nutrition. And so we see that, same thing taking place now with these food deserts. There's no regard for the nutritional output of Black people. The beatings, the torture, the lynchings, the racial inferiorizing concepts that were embedded into our minds during this entire period, even today. the racial insult and what people are calling microaggressions today. Those things, have been is inherently a part of Americanism, which is, again, it attacks our minds and bodies on a constant 24/7 basis. There's no word, there's no category in mental health or even physical health that describes what has happened to us as a people. I mean, we could talk about historical trauma, which is, historical trauma is trauma that happens to a group of people, and it's for an identifiable period of time, and there's a start point and there's an end point. Well, there's never been an end point of the trauma that we experience in this country, so the standard models of historical trauma doesn't apply to us. I think there's one writer who calls it, what has taken place with us as a people, he calls it humanicide. It's an attempt to kill our basic humanity, what it means to be human as a being on this planet. And so that is a constant attack. So when we talk about where we are mentally and emotionally, I think we have to begin from that particular point, that we're under constant attack mentally, emotionally, and physically. I also want to share a definition of child abuse, and it looks at child abuse coming from, traditionally we look at child abuse coming from a parent or a guardian or an individual who is has some direct relationship with the child. But under this definition of child abuse, we can see that America is inherently abusive to Black children. Definition of child abuse says the human acts of commission or omission or created or tolerated conditions that inhibit or preclude the unfolding or the development of the inherent potential of children. We see that those omissions, those commissions, we see that the created and tolerated conditions of our community produces or slaps our children in the face abusively on a day-to-day basis. So when we talk about child abuse, we just not can talk about what happens in the home of the child. We have to talk about what this nation does to our children on a regular basis. I think it was a report in July that 73%, there was a 73% increase in youth suicide, Black youth suicide attempts last year, where there was a 7% decrease in white teen suicide for the same period. So we see an apartheid reality. There's apartheid means separate development. We see an apartheid reality in Black America, in America, in major cities across the country. We think of apartheid as South Africa, but apartheid is happening right today. When you talk about all these disparities, in health and education and maternal mortality and youth mortality, infant mortality, all of these disparities show that there's been a systematic separate development initiative policy directed at our communities. When you look at the West Side, as my sister talked about, when you see this disinvestment for 50 years, I think there was a study, article just came out about this 50-year disinvestment. What we see is that we experience a policy of apartheid. Yesterday, most people are not aware that my profession is that I'm a real estate investor and a property manager. And yesterday I was leasing up to a young brother. He had, applied for an apartment and he was approved and we were leasing up. And as I was getting the paperwork together, the brother got a call and I heard him, don't cry, I'll be there, I'm doing this lease up. And I was like, brother, your child needs you right now. And he was like, no, my cousin just got killed. And there was really nothing just got shot. There's really nothing I can offer him, but man, I'm sorry, you want to do this another day? We can come back and do it. No, brother, I want to do it now. I really need this apartment. So as I'm making copies of these documents, I look at the brother and he got his head down and he's talking, he's talking to himself and he says, man, I thought this was going to be a good month. I'm like, wow, he almost made it out of the month. It's the 20th and he almost made it out of the month. He thought it was going to be a good month. And I don't think he really knew that he was saying that out loud, but that's the type of trauma that we experience. And, the brother was like 20 some years old. So it's youth is not just, under 18. We see these, this type of trauma, and we do not have the coping mechanism that we had in the past to help us deal with, the traumas of enslavement and the traumas of Jim Crow. We don't have cohesive communities, social affiliations are not there, our artistic expression, and thank Sister Ayesha for what she's doing, because our art has always helped us to cope. If we didn't have the spirituals, the Black spirituals and the blues and, jazz and even R&B, we couldn't have made it sanely in this country. But our music is not, our art is not what we had, and it's not allowing us to cope, but it also adds on to the trauma that we're experiencing. And so, we're not in a good state. And so when we talk about, when you ask about, if we had the resources, I can talk more about what I would like to do then, but I'll just stop there.
You can go on that. So if we had the resources, you can speak to that. One of the things that I'm struggling with as you're speaking is, if as embedded as you described this warfare, what use would it be if we brought some psychologists, social workers together to do some studies to articulate the ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, or to chart out a good description that is undeniably explaining the trauma and the injury? It does not seem to me that would soften their heart. That would be like, oh wow, Black people are really struggling. I didn't even realize that. Now let me give them reparations. We're not talking about a logical exchange here. We're not saying we're not talking about a human to human interaction. And so what else needs to happen that we as healers can do to help this movement along, if it does not seem to be that an awareness of a problem is the issue? Or is there some other creative way to explain it that you think that the movement needs? Like, how do we deal with this bumping against this wall against logic, against the people that you could argue are doing this very intentionally, and would not be surprised if we came up with a brilliant report to talk about all the injuries that have come? They're like, no, I did that on purpose. Now you're going to explain it to me. I know you injured. That's what I was doing to you, right? How does articulating that clearly help the movement, or is there some other way that we can be of use to that?
So one of the things thank you, Brother O'Barry, for asking that question, Dr. Carmen, for asking that question. One of the things we're seeing, and I was asked this question, similar question on a radio program about a month ago. Why is there so much movement in white spaces now around reparations, and when there wasn't, 2 or 3 years ago? And one of the things we're seeing is that, whites historically have, been this so-called logical, reasonable, rational people, and what we're seeing is that big data is not allowing them to turn their head from what is the reality. And so the more we use data, the more we use, the numbers, the more we show that the causation is undeniable as a result of the policies and procedures that have been put in place over years. I think that we're winning in that regards. We had to continue to do more, and we had to do a lot of things of our own. But that was something that we felt it was necessary in moving forward. Sister Ayesha talked about Rush University Medical College. About 5 years ago, in COVID Chicago chapter, we did an action against Rush University. Most people are not aware, there's a book called Medical Apartheid, where it showed how, in this particular instance, that Rush University, when they were starting out trying to get their enrollment up, they would rob African graves on the South Side and take those graves and experiment on them. Those bodies and experiment on them. And so we did an action. We called on the president to create a scholarship fund. We wanted 10 doctors per year. We want 100 doctors over a 10-year period, and $1 million to establish what we were calling the Transgenerational Epigenetic Injury Research Center. And we wanted these doctors trained in that fashion, because what we understand now is that we do not wear the scars of enslavement on our backs as our ancestors. We wear those scars on our DNA. We know that historical trauma affects us on the DNA level. There was a study about 15 years ago where they were able to show that grandchildren of Jewish Holocaust survivors had higher rates of diseases, heart attacks, strokes, et cetera, than their peers whose grandparents did not go through the Holocaust. And what we understand is that the Holocaust had an effect on them physically, not only psychologically. There's been tons of studies showing the psychological, the transmission of trauma psychologically from the Holocaust. But now we were talking about the physical trauma. And so we wanted, and we need a slew of researchers to deal with how this damage to our DNA can be mitigated, because it shows itself up in those higher levels of disease, which COVID attacked. So when COVID attacked us, not because we were unhealthy, which we were, but it was because of the DNA damage that led to the lack of health. And we all experience that. All of us have a propensity to be sick when we're 40, when we're 50. We're aging faster as a result of our telomeres shortening as a result of the social attacks on us as a people. Part of the response is premature aging. And so we're dying earlier, we're getting sicker earlier, we're forced to live a life, even if we're socially and economically viable, we're still forced to live a life where we're going to be on constant medications for the last quarter of our lifespan because of the DNA damage. And so we need some research, we need a system, a center that would do this type of research. We tried to engage right after COVID with Howard University's Medical Center and McCary University Medical Center to help us package a report that we can then present to governmental bodies. We're working now with Johns Hopkins University, where we're trying to get a report that looks at adverse childhood experiences, that looks at all of the literature out there on transgenerational epigenetic injury, transgenerational transmission of trauma, and see what the literature is saying, that how this can be mitigated. Sister Ayesha talked about meditation. I think one of the sisters talked about meditation. That's one of the things, but diet, nutrition, et cetera. But we need to know, and then we need to be able to share this information to our community in ways that every child, teenager, young adult, elder gets this information. And so that's what we're trying to do with the Chicago Reparations Commission, have that as one of our first initiatives, because not only on the area, as everyone said, physical health, but the mental health component of being in this inherently racist society is something that is going to continue to exacerbate unless there's specific targeted resources that are there to address it. And I hope I answered your question, Bob.
No, that's it. That's perfect. I love it. Thank you for that, Baba. We have a final guest speaker. I'm not sure if you showed up. Cam Buckner, another rep from the High Park area. If he's here, speak now, forever hold your peace. But as I'm scrolling through these, I see a bunch of folk that I would love to hear from. I see cousin Benny Lee. I don't know if you're also following the chat. This chat is rich too. So if you got thoughts or resources, please feel to share. I'm going to save the chat and make sure everybody gets a opportunity to read everything if you follow along the conversation and I'm missing comments. But I want to ask one question and then I'm going to open it. I want to, folks that are here that have ideas or thoughts or needs or offerings to be able to speak for yourself, to open the floor for the last 30 minutes. But one of the things I want to put on the table is that question still. What are the creative ways that we can implement programming actively? Like, what does it look like to do healing in this context? Where are the spaces? If we on the block with Tamar, if we in the hospital with Ayesha, if we in the community centers, if we in where do we go and what do we do to respond to all of the needs that we're talking about? And I want to use that to help shape when we go back to our meetings, ABSI, Black social workers. Now we can say, this is what the folks saying they need. This is what some ideas that have come from this. But we need tangible, like specific, pragmatic solutions to these problems. And they don't have to be all of them all at once, but where do we begin? What's the first thing that happens in January that we can do as an initiative that moves us forward? And, you know, and we would all love to offer free therapy every day, right? But to the point of resources and the funding that Rep. LaFord mentioned, that, you know, we got to eat too. We struggling too. We also impacted by a pandemic. We also losing folks. We also at capacity for lots of different reasons. So it's forcing us to think more creatively about what does it look like to do this work? How do we do it in virtual space? How do we incorporate technology? And when I say technology, I don't mean Zooms or coding. To me, technology includes divination and African drums. Like, there's ancient technology that taps into time travel that allows us to create portals of healing that we know very clearly about. What are some things that we can do? What are some ideas from the guest speakers, from the psychologists, from the social workers, from the community? I'm gonna open up for it now, just to that question. What are some innovative ways that the healers and the community workers can come together to make some offerings to start to reduce some of the harm and, dare I say, begin to repair some of the damage of the intergenerational harm that's happened to us? It goes beyond coping. I think a lot of the Western Americans traditions, you know, we can do deep breathing and good decision making and that kind of stuff, but it does not get at the depth of what Cam is speaking to, which is intergenerational trauma to our people. That includes culture, identity, arts. What does that look like, and what can we take back to our offices, to our organizations, to help us begin to put those things together, to plan some practical offerings to the community? So that's an open question. I see Tamar had her hand up, but anybody can speak to that going forward. Just what do we do from here? We know a lot. We got a lot of resources. What does it look like for the next step to make this come to life? Tamar?
I don't know what the next step is, but I know before we get to whatever that step is going to be, we have to commit to being consistent. Consistency is the key to everything. Nothing will work if you don't consistently do it. This has to become a way of life. This has to be something that we do after we brush our teeth every morning. We brush our teeth every morning after we shower. We have to do that thing. Whatever the thing is that we're going to commit to doing, we have to do that thing, because that's what the community responds to. Consistency. If consistently bad things are happening, then we have to counter that by consistently doing good things, by consistently trying to help. And it's not something that you can do once a season. It's not something you can do on weekends. It's not something you can do, you know, on holidays. It is an everyday thing. And we have to commit. Don't be a hero. If you can only just start small. If you can do one thing, one very small thing consistently, start there. Don't start. I sit on a corner every single day. I did it every summer, 7 days a week, every single day. Rain or snow, sleet or snow, whatever. I was there. That was difficult. Couldn't expect for everybody else to do it. It was hard for me. But if you're going to get involved and if you're going to make real change, you have to have consistency. People have to be able to count on you, and whatever the thing is that you are doing, they have to be able to count on that consistently.
I would like to piggyback on that, Dr. Obari. This is Dr. Palmer. And I just want to first stop and say how absolutely impressed I am with each and every one of you. You literally bring tears to my eyes. With that said, the one comment I would like to piggyback on from Dr. Obari's question is, I'm advocating educational village keepers. Our primary advocacy is quality public school education from pre-K to PhD. And we work at accomplishing that through organized parent engagement, organized civic engagement, and organized community engagement. Through that effort and working with the different organizations, seeing the wonderful unifying effort of this last national election, the term of horizontal unity, which is what I think you guys represent. You represent horizontal unity. That horizontal unity is being defined by me as cross generational, cross expertise, just whoever sees this vision and wants to commit in some way to it. So I'm going to say that in answer to your question, Dr. Obari, first to consider that concept of what you've already are doing and horizontal unity. Secondly, I'm a strong advocate and believer and practicer of you plan your work, then you work your plan. Organizing. This group right here, you couldn't get a better group.
Right.
If I gave a prayer and asked the maker, could you bring together for mental health? So a group, it would be you. So the task is huge. Each of you as leaders have explained the vastness of your own visions. Every one of those are needed. But what is needed more for outcome and action is identifying a core out of this group right now today that will debrief on this. Send out an invitation to those of us who are here who may want to add to our plates, which we already know are crazy,
right?
But who may want to add this new entity to it, where we identify the priorities realistically, so that we can do what Tamar just said, sticking to it, following through, stick and stay. Is our community has had enough of the nonsense where they get excited, they get encouraged, and the next thing they know, it's gone, it's not there. Sticking and staying. Realistic objectives. Something we want to do right away so we can feel good about collectively attaining one small goal. We've got State Rep Shawn, I adore him. He has just been an advocate, and he, we walk our talk. He does what he says he's going to do when he says he's going to do it. That's all our community needs to know, is that we're going to do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. And guess what else? We're going to do it extremely well.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how big, as long as we make forward movement, we celebrate that movement, that will inspire us and encourage us to see that we can accomplish our goals. So I'm going to close on, horizontal unity, get a core, let that core get back to us with how they've digested this magnificent conversation, set some realistic goals, call a follow-up meeting, and let's get the rubber hitting the road.
I love it. Yeah.
Dr. Obari, Dr. Cartman, this is Linda Johnson, and we've been keeping in touch, and I've been following you, and I've been a community activist for forever here in Chicago, and the things that I've seen over the years, and I because, well, number one, I got burnt out from the West Side as a child when King got killed. So I survived that era. Then when I went to high school and Chairman Fred Hampton was murdered, I'm a product of Hannibal Afrique. He was an African-American studies teacher at the time, and he made us, we walked out of Farragut High School, walked over there to their apartment to see where Chairman Fred and Mark Clark were murdered in their beds. So ever since then, I've tried to stand strong, but through family tragedies and everything that's going on in my life. And now I'm still surviving through this pandemic, but I'm surviving because I'm staying in the house because I have health issues and I can't be out doing what I normally do. Because I'm also on the I'm on the community rep for Wadsworth Elementary School. And I don't know what's going on because, you know, I'm just a community rep. I don't have any children at the school. So I don't know what's going on with the e-learning or none of that. But since I've been sitting in the house, I've been in this house since February, quarantine because of my health issues. And to see those babies die on our streets. So I started posting on Facebook that we propose that those who have lost loved ones to senseless gun violence file a class action suit against Smith & Wesson, the NRA, and all gun manufacturers because their study reaping profits off our backs and blood.
Mm-hmm.
And people look at me and oh, you can't do that. You can't. Why can't we start a petition to file a class action? Someone should be held reliable for those deaths and for the counseling that our community needs. And if we start that,
so there could be a class action suit, and then some of that money goes to resources to counseling. Because it's very specific, targeted. I love that.
Exactly.
I want to get as many of those as possible. So I want to move to that. I want to quickly get around to specific, targeted, practical suggestions. I have 6 hands up, so if we can do this quickly. Sorry to cut you off, Ms. Johnson, but our time is getting tight. I want to make sure as many folks can speak as possible. So I see Barbara Kwabena, Alexis Davis, Benny Lee, Rep. Shawn Ford, Miranda, Alexis, Jennifer Thompson, Lucretia Birth, Black High Priestess. Can y'all go quickly and share a comment or a question? I'll go Kwabena first. I see him in my order in my screen. You on mute, Barbara.
Yeah,
here you
real
go.
Quick, right on. Yeah, with the Clear the Airways project, and we dealing with this music that's on these radio stations, specifically the 2 European-owned radio stations, iHeart, which is 107.5, and the Crawford station, which is 92.3. They constantly play violent, vulgar, pornographic music, specifically targeting our children. We'll have 8-year-olds shot. We'll have 15 people shot at a funeral, and they're playing songs about shooting people at a funeral. Constantly dropping N-bombs, just crazy music. They need to stop. We got to make them stop. And I'll be pretty brief. I had a presentation that D.L. Hughley did a couple of years ago at Chicago State. He was my classmate in high school. So he went there and asked him a question about this music because he was working at the Crawford station at the time as part of their group. You know, what about this music? He said that horse is out the barn. And that horse is out the barn. But what it's doing out the barn is continuing to infect and infest and then mess up the psyche of the minds of the masses of our people, especially our youth. So we said we got to corral that horse, get it back in that barn, or just off it. You know, because one of the things we did when we talk about this music, and once we get this music off the air, is the psychological damage that is done, that the work that you all are going to have to do. And so we don't need to have that continuing to go on and on and on and on to add more and more people that we have to deal with. We have to stop these beasts. So I'm encouraging you all to work with us to Clear the Airways Project, be a part of the Clear the Airways Project. We have a petition out there on change.org. And we also are right now in the midst of a complaint to the FCC about both WGCI and 92.3 that should go nationwide because they do this nationwide. This is a psychological warfare that they have on our people right now. We got these papers of Metropolis that are all out in the community. So if you all get a chance to check them out, it's chronicling our issues with the FCC and them violating their decency standards, which are put in place to protect our children. And again, these radio stations specifically target our children with this poisonous, barbaric, dangerous music. And so that's where we're at. But yeah, please check us out. We need support. We can't do it by ourselves. We need our people to help us do this. We got to protect our children, our children, our children. They can't fend for themselves. And that music is killing us. Appreciate
I love it. Put a link to the petition in the chat for us, please. Barbara, Brother Rep Ford.
Yes. All right. I will say that one of the things that we can do, I don't know if many people heard of Grow Your Own Teachers. So that's a fund that we have in Springfield where we fund so that people could become teachers. I think this group would be perfect to come to Springfield. I'm the appropriations chair for higher education. We need to have a strong relationship with the public universities and the universities so that we could grow our own social workers, psychologists, and psychiatrists. That means that we could go to college for free and not be in debt. And that's what you have with some teachers right now. It's called Grow Your Own. So I will share that with you, Dr. Cartman, so that we could put together legislation to grow our own mental health capacity.
Yep, I love it. Makes sense. Get some sisters in the room. Alexis Willis. I don't see your face. I see your name.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess what I was wondering, I actually don't have a degree in anything related to mental health. I would like to get one. So I'm like a visual and performing artist, but I'm always watching webinars or reading about human behavior, trauma, and I work with youth, so it always comes up. And so for the past several months, I've been trying to figure out what is a resource, what is something I can do, like as someone who doesn't actually have like a degree to give to the community, but I'm often in situations where it's like providing someone with like coping mechanisms or a mild like listening like session or something like that. But something that Ayesha mentioned earlier that I thought was encouraging was that those key messengers, there are a lot of us performing artists because this is part of our craft and we always have to dive deep in that emotionally, that would like to be more empowered in this area and like help our community and help youth and help our neighbors and help our family members. And right now I live in Pullman and there are a lot of like facilities that are available, but it's like, oh, how do I go and present something like opening up a space to provide something for the community, especially when I don't have like an official degree. It's like, okay, I would have to team up with someone. And then how do you encourage people to even come if some people are worried about the virus? So I was very, like it intrigued me what was mentioned earlier about that that place, you know, where people could come and the youth could come. I'm like, wow, you know, people feel comfortable doing that. Like, how do you, I guess my question is one, you know, how do you empower someone who may not necessarily have the degree, but still is able to provide something as like a start and can maybe tie it in with something creative? And then how do you, I guess, reach out to specific locations that aren't really doing anything right now and you want to say, hey, there's actually a need for the community. Like, how do you do that?
I love it. Great question. One thing, real quickly, this is my personal position, is that there are limitations to degrees and to the trainings and the licenses that we get that often gets in the way of us doing as good a work as you could do organically. Just being having a caring heart and empathy and listening skills is healing by itself. And as an artist, you bring things that we don't have. But I do think that there's a way that we as an organization, Black social workers and psychologists, could create training forums where we teach you. It could be an informal study group where we teach what we know to give people a better sense of confidence in the things that we read. We could read them together also, so like a book club. But so I would want guidance from y'all about what are the topics that you would want. How much would you be willing to commit to a study group where we offer the things that we spend years studying that we would love to give to the people who are in place doing the work in communities where we can't be. So that could be a series of like, you know, a class, right? About how do you deal with depression, suicide, anxiety, breathing, all these kind of stuff that we could have a cadre of teachers that are doing it online that give you more confidence and skills and encourage you to tap into the things that you're already good at, which is, I think, you know, the first step for me. So that's something we can certainly do and something to bring back to the organizations. Thank you for that question. Benny Lee.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for allowing me to be on here. I think for me, I had to take a look at what lane I want to get in. You know, do I want to get in the mental health lane? Do I want to get into the reparation lane? Do I want to get into attacking poverty? Because I'm a convicted felon, you know, a former death row inmate, former gang leader, you know, my lane is working with brothers and sisters that are transitioning from prison back into the community and faced with all these collateral consequences to restrict them that serve as social disabilities. You know, like I've been out of prison 36 years, but still there's licenses I can't even apply for.
Right.
You know, I went to get, and I got my master's degree. I even teach at Northeastern in the Justice Studies Department. But if I went into a Walmart, they may have a policy say they don't hire convicted felon, may not even hire me as a stock boy. So this is what I've done is I've formed my own organization, NAFI, National Alliance for the Empowerment of the Formerly Incarcerated. And this is something State Rep. Shawn Ford can contest to. We don't have funding coming in, but our space where we work out of, St. Cofer Art and Culture Center, 5820 West Chicago, I keep the rent paid. I hustle. Because my objective is to work with our people, not to rely on a grant or funding, but do the work. You know, like I've housed meetings in Austin with the gang wars that's going on. I brought 9 cliques face to face to come about a truce, taking a risk, meeting with them little guys, because I know some of them might be wired. Case ready to tell to get out of that case. It can easily go to the police, like I'm stepping back in play as a gang leader, organizing them. But because of them so much, I take that risk to do that. We have what we call reentry circles. Because of the pandemic, we're not in the office face to face, but we have a reentry circle every Saturday on Zoom that anyone can tap into. Whereas we bring in formerly incarcerated, newly released people to the circle to talk about what they're struggling with. And we have what we call reentry coaches, like a life coach. These are reentry coaches. Men and women has been in the system and now home and stabilizing their lives to coach another newly released person through the process of reentry. And we do that Zoom meeting every Saturday. We just got off of 10 to 12, right, on Zoom. Anyone welcome to attend, because we want to connect men and women that are newly released with resources, right? But at the same time, create a network of reentry, right? And again, I don't wait on a grant, even though I have applied for grants, got little small block grants that don't really, a $20 grant ain't gonna really help me do a lot other than pay some reentry coach and a stipend for going to visit a person newly or buy some ink for the printer or something like that. But we find ourselves competing for grants, larger grants, but we get overshone because larger organizations that got a history of managing large grants, they end up getting the grants and we never get them because we compete against them. But I don't let that stop me. So I would suggest whatever you find your forte is, your lane is, get in it, right? Because either do this, do that. I said, no, my main focus is reentry. Even though I am a nonviolence trainer with the Institute for Nonviolence Chicago, but that ain't my main concern. My concern is how do I work with families that's impacted by this criminal justice system? How do I work with people that's being impacted? And these little kids that are traumatized when they separated from their parents, they have to go to prison. And then the parents traumatized when they come home and the children don't know them. And they look at grandma as authority and they figure, and not them. And those issues women got to go through coming home, can't even get public aid for their own children or subsidized housing or either Section 8 because of their conviction. So that's my lane. And I try to create a space where people could come that have those experiences, being you a family member or someone that's incarcerated or one newly released yourself. We create that space. And we do go after money, receive donations, but we don't let it stop us. The rent gets paid. We still do our Zoom meetings. We collected a bunch of masks and took it to the prison. A lot of masks for the youth that's in those juvenile facilities, let them know we're still there. So that's something I'm doing. With that, I'll stop right there. And to mention—
Appreciate you, brother. Somebody asking about how to reach you.
He's my cousin.
True. Big fan of your work too, Bob. Somebody asking how to reach you in the chat. I love your work, Benny Lee, for sure. We got 5 minutes. Can I do 1 minute per comment? I see Marilyn Scott, Miranda Easley, Alexis Davis, Jennifer Thompson, Lucretia. Can we do a minute of your 5 of y'all in a row? I'll start with Dr. Scott. Let's see first. You on mute, Doc. You still on mute. You still on mute. Doc Scott, you on mute, Dr. Scott. Still. Yep. There we go. There she goes.
Okay.
There she
First
goes.
of all, let me introduce myself. I am so pleased because I've been looking for this type of leadership. I've been looking for these types of political people that you have on here. I have been looking for you. I am a school as well as a clinical psychologist. I've been involved with ABSI for at least 25 years. I've been a PS president, but I'm also very, very I worked as a school psychologist for 30 years. I have been working as a clinical psychologist, so I combined the two. Right now I'm working at Shabazz. It's called Shabazz and Beverly Sizemore Schools. These are our wonderful Black cultural schools. Now, I work with parents as well. I'm looking at the trauma that has occurred. I'm looking at our families right now. They are struggling bad. They have problems with food. We're in a food desert over in Inglewood on 65th and Stewart. We are having, I'm talking to parents, I'm talking to families. They are struggling with this trauma. It's intergenerational trauma. I have not figured out how we're going to do it. But if I've got people like you, we can do the healing circles. We can do the drumming, all of that. I'm also a Trinitarian, unashamedly and unapologetically Black. It's ingrained in me. I'm into our history. I'm into our culture. I'm into our people. So what I'm looking for, I know we don't have a political voice all the time. That's how I feel. But talking with you all, we can do it. We can form that core. We can build the village. We can do the drumming. We can use creative artists to bring in the teenagers. We can also do some parenting work. I don't want that part forgotten. And we need to retrain and work with our parents. I'm sorry, I do it every day. We need to work with families. We cannot isolate them. We must bring them to us. We have to work with celebrities. We got to work with the artists. We got to, it's no big eyes and little U's. I love the fact that we can get people that don't have degrees in psychology, social work does not matter. We need what you have. We want you to come in. We want you to work with us. Find your place because we all have responsibility and a place. Black psychologists will stand with you. We are available. We're available to help. I don't want to get on the preaching thing. Let's do it.
Thank you very much.
This.
That's close to a minute. That's close to a minute. Let's see who else can do closer to the minute. Alexis Davis. Thank you, Dr. Scott. That's very.
All right, peace everybody. My name is Dr. Alexis Davis. I'm a clinical psychologist. I mentioned in the chat earlier that I'm definitely down to do hip hop healing circles. My dissertation has been studying the healing components of hip hop culture, specifically rap music among people of African descent. So not only wiping out hip hop culture and rap music, but teaching our youth about the historical legacy between African spirituality, hip hop culture, and then rap music as an expression. So I definitely love to. I'm sorry?
Where are you at?
I'm in Arkansas right now, but I'm a part of the mobile gang.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I love it. Yes. We should talk. I do that for myself too. Yes.
Hi, Dr. Barry. Hello, everyone. My name is Leslie Page Piper. I'm so pleased to be here to hear this forum. It's really inspiring. I have been a urban and community planner, developer, and organizer, manager for around 40 years. I'm also a drummer with the Drum Divas. I play percussion and did go, in fact, to get initiated in Nigeria and Ifa about 10 years ago. This is my concern. I was in a meeting that was sponsored by the Department of Planning and Development, where they're now about to do a 5-year plan to now set forth over for the next 20, 30 years, what should be the course and prioritize what we should be doing in the city in terms of development. Now, to go back in my background, I've done
can you do it quickly, please? So we right at time too. So we can you do it very, very quickly, please?
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just say we just need to partner urban planners and people that are doing the hard side of community development really needs to partner and follow the foundational things that the mental health workers are doing, because we need you to be able to help, because we have money out here and it's going out to these programs and people aren't showing up because of their family and social structure. So we need to figure out how to work together, because we really need you all. And so this is what I'm going to get across to the city of Chicago, to bring this collective in to begin to see how to do work, because we need you all. And so that's what I just wanted to say.
I love it.
Okay.
We're here.
Thank you so
very
much. Okay.
Lucretia.
Hello?
Lucretia,
Okay.
Thank
you. Thank you. I want to speak to mental health policy, because earlier, Dr. Obari, I know you said that when I think it's Ford was speaking, you said that you know, policy wasn't your area. As a person who studied public policy, you know, at the basic level, public policy has to be each and every one of our areas. If you're in school, if you are an educator, you need to focus on education policy. If you are a mental health professional, especially with this association, you all have to get involved in terms of creating public policy, because the legislators and the activists on the ground who are pushing public policy, we have very limited information about these obstacles and these issues, and we don't have the language, right? So in order for us to change the situations or
your audio going in and out, Lucretia.
Can you hear me now? Is this better?
Yeah, that's better. Whatever you just did is better.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that our mental health professionals are spending a lot of time on identifying mental health issues and providing coping techniques, but we have to stop some of these things from occurring, right? And so the only way to do that is to force our systems and our structures to change. And that cannot
You still in
happen.
and out. I'm sorry. You don't have to type this. You still in and out. We can't hear you that good.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Dr. Thompson.
Hello?
Yes.
Yeah, hi. I am a professor at Kennedy King College, and we've actually had you at our school, the same as Shawn Ford. Shawn Ford, when he was running for mayor, came to Kennedy King's mayoral forum. And so it's great to see both you guys here. Obari, I think you were here at Kennedy King for our reparations event, and we talked about after the event. And so I was interested in LaShawn Ford. He said he was on the appropriations for higher education committee. And that's something I think I would love to get more involved with, since our school is doing a lot of grant writing to offer free training programs and free tuition to students. And one of the problems at Kennedy King is our enrollment is low, but there's such a strong need for African Americans to get educated and into these different training programs. And it'd be nice to connect these things. Also, I was just hoping that there is a follow-up meeting related to all this stuff. I'm taking notes of everyone and what they're doing, because there's so much stuff that I would love to get further involved with. The Clear the Airwaves, the Shabazz, Beverly Sizemore, since they're so close to Kennedy King in the first place. And I know we were doing we have a food pantry there now, and you have people who are struggling with food, and it's like, we need to connect. And I also wanted to know if there's like a lobbying arm, and if not, we need one, because we need some money. You have money. Governor LaShawn Ford is right. You go on the website, there's all these grants for just specifically Black people, but we need to get it. And then also, as far as spiritual groups, Pilar Reed is doing a lot of work with the spiritual healing side of things. And I know she works with it's like a transformation racial unity group that would be good to tap into this. But the key thing is to like have this all written down as like a to-do list, maybe to see if we can make some of these things happen. But at the core, we do need some money. And that's what every other organization focuses on, is getting large monies and grants. And then we can have the resources, and it doesn't have to be grants. It could be fundraising. You have a lot of people, a lot of celebrities out here who've got money and don't know what to do with it in terms of philanthropy that we need to connect with so that we are more sustainable. One of the things we do is we jump right into doing the work, which is great, but then we don't have enough resources to keep it going, so we don't get a chance to scale up. So that's what I wanted to say.
I love it. I agree completely. We're gonna wrap right at 1:10. So we get last couple of comments. We can do it quickly. I want y'all to speak so it can be recorded. So, you know, once I send the thing out. But if y'all gotta go, thank y'all for being here. It's been a brilliant conversation. I'm gonna get these last 3 comments very quickly for the recording. And any resources you want to share, please put it in the chat. It's also gonna be saved. So Miranda.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Real quick, I just want to say that I am starting an influencing brand called Shy AFQ, and that stands for a Shy Aspiring Future Queen. And the reason why I say that is because I was a political science major. I'm also a part of organizations called the Workers Center for Racial Justice, in addition to the Black Mall. So as a queen, it's not necessarily about being fabulous, but it's taking responsibility and trying to serve the people. And I know that mental health is one of those things that definitely needs to happen. So if there's anybody out there that wants to speak to the youth, talk to the youth, do that type of thing, I would definitely love for the youth to become a part of.
You muted yourself.
Unmute. Hi. I don't know how that even happened. I wasn't even touching the phone, but definitely just wanted to put that out there because I think that the work that we're doing is very important, and to make sure that we all come together politically, economically, mentally, physically, everything has to come together in order for us to thrive and break the generational curses that we have come adapted to. And I'm also doing this by changing myself, and hopefully as I become a I don't want to say it like that, but basically as I'm changing myself, I want other people to see that it's okay for them to change, because I'm no different than anybody else. So I'm just putting that out there, and I put my Facebook information and my email in the chat.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. And our final comment will come end us off in a spiritual healing note. Black High Priestess could send us off with some healing words, please.
Peace. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Well, to make it quick, the first thing I want to say is, you know me, you know what I'm about, you know me for years. I'm here to hold the leadership responsible. As Black High Priestess, I am focused on Blackness as an energy, color, and a race. And the leadership is a reflection of the community. The level that the community is at is a reflection of leadership, quality of the leadership, and the qualifications or lack thereof of our Black leadership in Chicago, whether it's the psychologists, the healers, no matter what. I'm here to hold the leadership accountable. We're too easily impressed with the low standards that our leadership sets. We're too easily impressed with each other and the level of popularity we have in the community. And we are not looking at our resources. We're not utilizing our resources. I'm here to address the COINTELPRO agency that does not allow solutions to be implemented, because we're too focused on who we choose as leaders. There's some comments that were mentioned. We have plenty of people to do this. We don't have anyone qualified to set up the round table needed. We are not at a royal status with our leadership, and I'm here to do that. I'm going to offer everybody an Oracle consultation that was on this chat. All you have to do is contact me. This is a $50 value plus per hour that I'm offering for free. We need to also deal with the incentives that our leadership have to do things for free, and the incentives that the community have to come out to these events. We're not bringing the people who need the help. We're not connecting. And the most important thing that I'm here to establish is getting women in these positions, that the Black women who are doing the most work and the sisters who clearly made the most relevant comments about the violence, how it's affecting the kids, how we need to do the healing work. We spent 27 minutes, everyone talking about how they knew each other and everything. It was 27 minutes in this meeting before someone about a solution. They're too focused on problems. And in 2020, we are still talking and wasting time talking about problems instead of actively implementing solutions. Our leadership is failing, and I'm here to set a higher standard for what a leader is.
Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Thank you all for your comments, your feedback in the chat, and in the conversation. So much work to do. But so many resources to do it all. I'm encouraged, I'm inspired, and there will absolutely be follow-up. We're gonna take notes, we're gonna organize the information in the chat. I'll make sure everybody has all the contact information that was submitted, and whatever the next steps are. And this is, whether you did the question about a follow-up meeting, there's gonna be follow-up meetings on meetings and seminars and workshops, and it's gonna be nothing but follow-up based on the needs and the resources that have been expressed today. So stay in tune, stay consistent, stay encouraged, and I thank you all for your presence and your brilliance for this conversation today. Special thanks to my special invited guests, Representative Shawn Ford, Cam Howard, Ayesha, Jaco, Tamar, and maybe Cam Buckner will show up next time. Thank y'all so much. I appreciate this. Y'all have a wonderful rest of y'all Saturday. And yeah, let's go get some work done. I'm gonna leave the thing open for a while so y'all can scroll through the chat if y'all need to. But I think there's a way for each and every one of you to save it on your own. I believe Jaco mentioned putting the 3 buttons, the 3 ellipses, that you can click that and save your own chat for yourself if you don't want to wait for us to do it and send it to you. So yeah, no, this is dope. Thank y'all.
Yeah, thanks. Great job, guys.
Yes, sir. Thank you, bro.
Absolutely excellent.